The salt flats of Rill did not crunch like snow. They shattered like glass. It was a distinctive sound, a sharp, brittle complaint that echoed under the heavy tread of Robin's environmental boots. Every step was a negotiation with the surface, a reminder that this moon was not designed for human comfort, nor was it particularly interested in human survival. The sky above was bruising into a deep, melancholic purple as the local star dipped below the jagged horizon. It was that specific time of day when the temperature plummeted from bearable to lethal in the span of 20 minutes. Battery at 4%, a mechanical voice droned from the hovering unit over Robin's left shoulder. I am legally obligated to inform you that if I freeze, my warranty is void. Robin adjusted the strap of his resource pack, wincing as it dug into a sore spot on his shoulder. You have been out of warranty for 7 years, Patch. If you freeze, I will just thaw you out on the radiator like a bag of peas. Ember. Disrespectful, Patch whirred. The drone was an outdated spherical model, chipped and scarred from years of exposure to the corrosive salts of Rill. One of its optical sensors had a permanent squint, giving it the appearance of a perpetually skeptical floating eye. My sensors indicate a storm front approaching from the north quadrant. Suggested action, panic and run. Suggested action, conserve energy and shut up, Robin corrected, though he picked up his pace. Ahead, the research cabin was a dark geometric blemish on the white expanse. It was a squat, reinforced structure anchored into the bedrock beneath the salt to withstand the gale force winds that scoured the surface. To anyone else, it looked like a coffin made of titanium and polymer. To Robin, it was the only thing in the universe that smelled like coffee and recycled air. It was home. He had been out longer than intended, chasing a mineral anomaly near the ridge that turned out to be nothing more than a trick of the light and a faulty scanner. That was the story of his life on Rill, chasing ghosts in the ice. Home sweet fortress, Robin muttered, his breath pluming in the rapidly cooling air. Detecting thermal anomaly, Patch stated his voice, glitching slightly on the last syllable. Proximity 10 feet, location doorstep. Robin frowned behind his faceplate. Is it the heater vent again? I told you I fixed the seal. Negative. Biological signature. Weak. Irregular. Robin stopped. The wind howled a low, mournful sound that vibrated through the soles of his boots. A biological signature out here was impossible. Apart from the microbial life deep in the salt brines, Rill was dead. Nothing lived on the surface. Nothing walked the flats. He reached for the stun baton clipped to his belt, a habit from his days in the colonies, rather than a necessity here, and approached the cabin cautiously. The external lights of the habitat flickered on, triggered by his proximity, casting a harsh yellow pool of illumination onto the metal grating of the porch. Robin froze. Lying on the grate, curled into a tight, desperate ball, was a child. At least it had the general geometry of a child. But the light revealed details that made Robin's breath hitch in his throat. The figure was small, wearing tattered fabrics that looked like woven metallic silk. Where human ears should have been two triangular furred points, twitched against the cold. The skin was pale, but covered in a fine, downy layer of fur that shimmered like frozen mist. A long tail, thick and anxious, was wrapped around the small body as if trying to hold the pieces of him together. "What in the void?" Robin whispered. Patch hovered closer, his single good eye rotating with a whir. Species unknown. Vital signs critical. Core temperature dropping below safe limits. Recommendation, do not touch. Quarantine protocols dictate, quiet, Robin snapped. He stepped onto the porch. The crunch of his boots made the figure flinch. The creature lifted his head. His face was a mixture of human and wolf, with a muzzle that was delicate rather than bestial, and eyes the size of saucers glowing with a faint, bioluminescent amber hue. Around the boy's neck was a heavy collar of black metal. It pulsed with a rhythmic low light synchronized with the boy's labored breathing. The boy looked at Robin, The amber eyes were terrified glassy with hypothermia. He opened his mouth, revealing small, sharp teeth, and tried to speak. No sound came out at first, just a dry rasp. Robin knelt, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Hey," he said, his voice soft, distorted by his helmet's external speaker. "It is okay. You are okay." The boy shivered violently. He reached out a hand with 4 fingers and dark, non-retractable claws, and clutched the shin of Robin's environment suit. "Robin," the boy whispered. The sound of his own name, spoken in perfect English by a lupine alien on a deserted moon, hit Robin like a physical blow. He reeled back slightly, his mind racing. "How do you know my name?" Robin asked, panic spiking. The boy did not answer. His eyes rolled back, the amber light fading to a dull gray, and he slumped forward unconscious, his cheek pressing against the freezing metal grate. "Target is unresponsive," Patch noted, unhelpfully. Protocol 7, Section 4. Do not invite unknown biological entities into the habitat. Risk of contamination 100%. Robin looked down at the small, shivering heap. He looked at the vast, uncaring darkness of the salt flats. He knew the rules. He knew that on Rill, altruism was usually the first step toward a fatality. If this boy was here, someone or something had put him here, or was hunting him. "Protocol can go to hell," Robin muttered. He holstered the baton and scooped the child up. The boy was impossibly light, like holding a bundle of hollow bird bones and static electricity. "I am definitely the type of person who does not know how to say no to a bad idea," Robin told the unconscious boy. "Welcome to the unexpected kid." He keyed the airlock code. The heavy door hissed open and Robin stepped inside, carrying the weight of a mystery that was about to shatter his solitude forever. The interior of the cabin was a cluttered sanctuary of retrotech and scavenged comfort. Screens lined one wall displaying geological data that no one had looked at in 3 years. A coffee mug with the inscription, "World's Okayest Ex-Pilot," sat on the console, growing a colony of mold that Robin kept meaning to clean. Robin laid the boy on the medical cot in the center of the living module. He stripped off his heavy environment suit with practiced speed, kicking the boots into the corner, and immediately grabbed the emergency medical scanner. "Patch, crank the ambient temperature to 75 degrees, Robin ordered, rolling up his sleeves. "And scan him for pathogens. If he is carrying a plague, I want to know before I start doing mouth-to-mouth." "Scanning," Patch replied, hovering above the cot. "No airborne pathogens detected. However, the subject's physiology is confusing. 2 hearts, elevated metabolic rate, and that collar is emitting a high-frequency signal that is interfering with my navigation." Robin ignored the drone and focused on the boy. Now that they were in the light, the creature was beautiful in a terrifying way. The fur was silver-tipped, shifting in color as the boy breathed. The collar was the concern. It was tight against the throat, seamless with no visible clasp. Every time the amber light on the collar pulsed, the overhead lights in the cabin dimmed in unison, a low thrum, vibrating through the floor plates. "It is drawing power," Robin realized. "Or it is broadcasting." He grabbed a warm, damp cloth and began to wipe the salt and grime from the boy's face. The boy whined low in his throat, a sound purely animalistic, but his hands, human hands, save for the claws, twitched. "Thermal dryness," Robin diagnosed aloud, checking the boy's mucous membranes. It was a common affliction for off-worlders on Rill. The atmosphere stripped moisture from the body faster than one could drink. "He needs electrolytes. Patch, synthesize a saline glucose mix, oral administration. Flavor it. I do not know. Chicken to wolves like chicken." "Stereotyping is unbecoming of a scientist," Patch chided, but a small dispenser on the drone's underbelly clicked and produced a pouch of clear liquid. Robin lifted the boy's head gently. "Come on, kid. Drink." He trickled the liquid into the side of the boy's mouth. reflex kicked in, and the boy swallowed, coughing slightly. As the fluids hit his system, the boy's eyes fluttered open again. They were unfocused, swimming in a haze of exhaustion. Without warning, the boy's hand shot out and gripped Robin's wrist. The claws dug in slightly, not enough to draw blood, but enough to hold. It was not an act of aggression. It was an anchor. The boy was drowning in the unknown, and Robin was the only solid thing in the universe. Robin froze, looking at the small clawed hand on his arm. He felt a sudden, sharp pang in his chest, an echo of a life he had left behind a decade ago. He had spent so long telling himself he preferred the silence, preferred having no one to talk to but a kettle and a sarcastic drone. "I have got you," Robin whispered, his voice rough. "You are safe." The lights in the cabin flared bright white, then dimmed to red. "Warning!" Patch blared. "Unauthorized intrusion in the communication array. Firewall breached. Encryption bypassed. Someone is knocking Robin, and they are not using the doorbell." The main monitor on the wall, usually reserved for weather patterns, hissed with static. The image twisted, pixelated, and then snapped into razor-sharp clarity. Robin stood up, positioning himself between the screen and the boy on the cot. The face on the screen was striking severe and undeniably alien. It was a woman or a female humanoid with features that mirrored the feline kingdom, just as the boy's mirrored the lupine. Her skin was a deep obsidian hue, her eyes vertical slits of glowing emerald. Her hair was pulled back in a severe braid, revealing ears that tapered to elegant, deadly points. She wore armor that looked like ceramic plating over a bodysuit of mesh. She did not look like she had come to negotiate. She looked like she had come to execute. "You," the woman said. Her voice was like cold silk sliding over a knife edge. "You have something that does not belong to you." Robin crossed his arms, leaning against the medical console to hide the tremor in his hands. He forced a smile, the one he used to use when playing poker with pirates in the asteroid belt. "Good evening to you two. I usually prefer a hello before the accusations start. I am Robin, and you are trespassing on a private frequency." The woman's eyes narrowed. "I am Commander Seraphine of the starship Velvet Eclipse. You are holding a Priority 1 asset. Return it immediately, and your habitat will remain intact." Robin glanced back at the boy, who was shivering, on the cot clutching the blanket. "Asset," Robin repeated, turning back to the screen. "That is a little cold, isn't it? I have not even had time to ask the kid his name yet, and you are talking about him like he is a crate of spare parts. It sounds a bit lacking in humanity. Or felinity. Whatever applies." Seraphine did not blink. "He is not a child. He is a weapon. He is a—" "And you have no idea what you have dragged into your house?" "He is a boy who was freezing to death on my doorstep," Robin countered, his voice losing its humor. "And he knows my name. Care to explain that part?" "He knows many things he should not," Seraphine said. "He is a mimic, a key. If you keep him there, you endanger yourself and everything within 100 miles. Release him." "I am treating him for shock," Robin said stubbornly. "I am not throwing a sick child back out into the ice just because a hologram told me to." Seraphine leaned closer to her camera, her emerald eyes seeming to bore through the screen. "You think you are being kind. You are being foolish. You have until dawn. If the wolf child is not outside your door when the sun hits the horizon, we will come in and get him. And we do not knock." The screen went black. "Well," Patch said into the silence, "that went well. I suggest we start drafting a will. I leave my spare batteries to the toaster." Robin rubbed his temples. He looked at the boy, the asset, who was now watching him with wide, intelligent eyes. The boy's breathing had steadied, but the collar was pulsing faster now, a rhythmic thump-thump of light. "Who are you?" Robin asked softly. The boy did not speak. He simply curled tighter into the blanket, his tail wrapping over his nose, and closed his eyes. Sleep was a fractured, uneasy thing. Robin dozed in the command chair, a heavy pistol resting on his lap. The cabin was filled with the sounds of the wind buffeting the reinforced walls. But beneath that there was a new sound. A low hum emanating from the boy's collar that seemed to vibrate in Robin's teeth. Around 3 a.m, the dream came. He was standing on the salt flats, but the sky was not purple. It was a burning, violent gold. He looked up and the stars were gone. Instead, the sky was filled with eyes. Thousands of giant feline eyes, blinking in unison. A sound tore through the vacuum. A roar that was not sound, but pressure. It sounded like 1,000 giant cats screaming across the fabric of space. The ground beneath him cracked fissures opening up to swallow the cabin. Robin tried to run, but his feet were heavy, turned to lead. He looked down and saw that he was holding a chain. The chain led into the darkness, and at the end of it, the wolf boy was pulling him toward the edge of the world. "Let go," the boy whispered in the dream, "or they will eat the sun." Robin woke with a gasp, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. The cabin was bathed in a rhythmic, strobing red light. "Alert," Patch was saying, his voice unusually calm. "Alert. Proximity breach. Multiple signatures. Too many to count." Robin scrambled out of the chair, grabbing the pistol. He looked at the cot. The boy Koa, that was the name he had decided on, simpler than alien wolfchild, was sitting up. He was awake, staring at the door, daring. The collar around his neck was blazing with light, now a beacon in the dim room. "They are here," the boy whispered. His voice was clearer, now less raspy. Robin moved to the window, rubbing the frost from the reinforced glass. He looked out, and the weapon in his hand suddenly felt very small and very useless. Dawn had arrived. A thin, razor-sharp line of silver light was cutting across the eastern horizon, illuminating the salt flats. And on the flats they stood. It was not a squad. It was an army. 300 women stood in a perfect geometric circle around the cabin. They were motionless statues carved from obsidian and starlight. Their armor was identical, sleek, articulated plates that reflected the dawn light, turning them into shimmering ghosts. Each of them held a weapon, a long, curved blade that glowed with a faint, violet energy. They stood in absolute silence, their spacing precise, their discipline terrifying. There was no shouting, no posturing. Just 300 warriors waiting for a command. "That is a lot of cats," Robin breathed. "Count confirmed 300 units, Patch said. Statistical probability of survival in a direct confrontation, 0.0001%. And that is assuming they trip over their own tails." The comm screen flickered to life again. Seraphine was back. She looked exactly as she had the night before, unruffled, terrifyingly composed. "The sun is up, Robin," she said. Robin hit the transmit button. "I see that. You brought friends. Subtle." "This is not a negotiation," Seraphine said. "This is a retrieval. Send him out." Robin looked at Koa. The boy was trembling, but he slid off the cot. He looked at Robin with an expression of tragic acceptance. He was ready to go. He was used to being the thing that was traded to stop the violence. Robin felt a surge of anger hot enough to melt the ice outside. He hated bullies. He hated inevitability. And he really, really hated being told what to do before he had had his morning coffee. "Patch, keep the door sealed," Robin ordered. "But—" "Seal it," Robin turned back to the screen. "I am coming out. Just me. We need to talk." "There is nothing to talk about," Seraphine said. "Then you can shoot me," Robin said, bluffing, with every ounce of confidence he possessed. "But if you shoot me, you will never know how to turn off the self-destruct sequence I just activated on the cabin. The one that will vaporize the boy along with me." There was a silence. It was a complete lie. The cabin's self-destruct system had been broken for 5 years. Robin had used the wiring to fix the toaster. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. "You are lying." "Am I?" Robin grinned a manic, terrified expression. "I live alone on a frozen rock. I am barely sane. Do you want to roll those dice, Commander?" Seraphine stared at him for a long 10 seconds. Then she nodded once. "Come out." Unarmed. Robin put the pistol on the console. He looked at Koa. "Stay here. Do not open the door for anyone but me. If I am not back in 10 minutes, well, there are emergency rations under the floorboards." He cycled the airlock and stepped out into the freezing morning. The cold bit through his suit immediately, but the heat of 300 pairs of eyes watching him was more intense. The circle of warriors was breathtaking. Up close, he could see the difference in scars, variations in fur color, the way they held their weapons. But they moved as one organism. Seraphine stood at the front, her helmet retracted to show her face. She was taller than him, imposing and majestic. Beside her stood another warrior, slightly smaller, with goggles pushed up on her forehead, and a datapad in her hand, Juniper presumably. "You have courage," Seraphine said, her voice carrying over the wind. "Or a lack of survival instinct." "They are often the same thing," Robin replied, keeping his hands visible. "Now, tell me why you brought an army to pick up one kid." "He is the wolf child," Seraphine said, as if that explained everything. "The law of the eclipse is clear. Whoever carries the wolf child across the threshold is bound by the Dawn debt." Robin blinked. "The Dawn debt sounds expensive. Can I pay in installments?" To his left, the warrior with the goggles, Juniper let out a short, sharp snort of laughter. She quickly covered her mouth with a gauntleted hand as Seraphine shot her a withering glare. "It is not a financial debt," Seraphine said, turning back to Robin, her irritation visible. "It is a burden of fate. You have interfered with a cycle that is thousands of years old. The boy is a beacon. When the sun hits that collar, it sends a signal that calls things much worse than us." Robin looked at the ring of warriors. "Worse than 300 armed super soldiers." "Yes," Seraphine said gravely. "The ring we have formed is not to keep you inhuman. It is to dampen the signal. We are creating a jamming field with our armor to prevent the signal from reaching the deep void." Robin paused. He looked at the warriors again. They weren't pointing their weapons at the cabin. They were facing outward, their backs slightly turned to him. They were a shield. "He is sick," Robin said, his tone shifting. "He has thermal shock. If you take him now, drag him onto a cold ship, he might die. Is his corpse useful to you?" Seraphine hesitated. A flicker of something conflict crossed her face. "He must be secured." "I can secure him," Robin said. "My cabin is shielded. Lead-lined walls, radiation dampening. It is probably a better signal blocker than your standing army." "Doubtful," Juniper muttered, tapping her datapad. "Though his shielding specs are surprisingly robust for a rust bucket." Robin ignored the insult. "Here is the deal. You lower the weapons. You let me stabilize him. I get him healthy, and while I do that, you explain to me what the hell is actually going on. No riddles, no Dawn debt mysticism, just facts." "And if I refuse," Seraphine asked, "then you can explain to your superiors why the asset died of cardiac arrest in transport," Robin said. "I am a medic. Well, I have a first aid certificate from 20 years ago, but that is more than you have down here." Seraphine looked at the cabin, then at Robin. She seemed to be weighing the cost of violence against the risk of delay. "We do not leave," she said finally. "The circle remains. We hold the perimeter. If the signal spikes, we breach and extract, regardless of your self-destruct." "Fair enough," Robin said, letting out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. "But can you ask your troops to stop glaring? It is making me nervous." "No," Seraphine said. "They glare because you are soft, Robin. And soft things break on Rill." "I have lasted this long," Robin said, turning back to the airlock. Maybe soft is more durable than you think. As the airlock hissed shut behind him, sealing out the cold, and the army of catwomen, Robin leaned his forehead against the cool metal of the door. His legs were shaking. "Did we die?" Patch asked, floating down from the ceiling. "Not yet," Robin said, pushing himself off the door. He looked at Koa, who was watching him from the cot. The amber light on the collar was pulsing slowly. Again, calm. "Okay, kid," Robin said, walking over to check the boy's vitals. "The good news is we have house guests. The bad news is I think I am going to need more coffee." Outside, the sun rose higher, and the 300 warriors stood their ground, a ring of silver fire against the purple ice waiting for the world to end. The airlock cycled with a hiss of decompression that sounded suspiciously like a weary sigh. It was a sound Robin knew well, but this time it heralded something far more dangerous than the usual icy draft. As the inner door slid open, the temperature in the cabin seemed to drop 10 degrees, not from the atmosphere, but from the sheer presence of the two figures who stepped across the threshold. Commander Seraphine had to duck slightly to avoid hitting her head on the doorframe. Inside the cramped confines of Robin's living quarters, she looked impossibly large and dangerously out of place. Her armor, which had shimmered like starlight on the salt flats, now looked matte and heavy, under the harsh, artificial lighting of the cabin. It was a deep, light-absorbing gray, etched with faint, glowing violet lines that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. Behind her came the smaller warrior Juniper. She was less imposing, but infinitely more curious. Her goggles were pushed up into a mass of braided hair, revealing eyes that were wide golden and darting around the room, cataloging every piece of outdated technology Robin owned. "Welcome to the humble abode," Robin said, backing up until his hips hit the edge of the central table. He gestured vaguely around the room. "Please do not mind the mess. The maid service is on strike. Indefinitely." Seraphine did not smile. She removed her helmet, completely tucking it under one arm. Her face was severe, all high cheekbones and intense focus, but there was a flicker of something else in her eyes as she scanned the room, caution. "Secure the perimeter, Lieutenant," Seraphine ordered, her voice clipped. Juniper tapped a sequence on her wrist gauntlet. "Perimeter secured, Commander. The 300 are in position. The jamming field is active. We are invisible to orbital scans. For now." Robin frowned, crossing his arms. "You keep mentioning this jamming field. Is that why my toaster stopped working 10 minutes ago? Because I take my breakfast very seriously." "The field generates a high-frequency electromagnetic dampener," Juniper explained, her tone conversational, as if she were discussing the weather. "It scrambles long-range sensors. Your toaster is likely a casualty of war. My condolences." "Right," Robin muttered. "Casualty of war. I will add it to the bill." He glanced at the medical cot where Koa was still sleeping, though the boy's rest looked fitful. The collar around the child's neck was pulsing with a soft, rhythmic light that seemed to be fighting against the harsh, fluorescent glare of the room. "Explain," Robin said, looking directly at Seraphine. "You said you are from a starship. I have been scanning the skies of Rill for a decade. I have never seen a ship large enough to carry 300 people, let alone one that looks like a giant ring." Seraphine walked over to the viewport, looking out at the battalion of women standing motionless in the snow. "You would not see us. The Velvet Eclipse is a stealth-class habitat ring. We have been in low orbit for 6 months stranded. Our propulsion drive failed after the last jump." "Stranded," Robin repeated. He knew that feeling. "So you are refugees." "We are exiles," Seraphine corrected, turning back to him. Her gaze was heavy. "Our society is complicated. We are the feline vanguard. We serve the matriarchy. Or rather, we did. Until the schism." She pointed a gauntleted finger at Koa. "That boy is not just a child. He is a biological component. We call it a beacon. His species, the lupine, have a unique resonance with the solar frequencies of this system. That collar links his nervous system to the dawn. The dawn? Robin asked, confused. You mean the sun? I mean the moment of transition, Seraphine said. The energy spike when light hits the dark. The collar harnesses that. It is a key, Robin. A key that unlocks the dormant weapon systems of our stranded ring. If he is awake, and if he is outside when the sun hits the zenith, the collar will transmit a signal that will turn our home into a planet killer. Robin looked at the small, fragile figure on the bed. He is a trigger. He is a howl key, Seraphine said. And there are those among my people, specifically Matron Sable and her Fangstar sect, who believe that we should use that key. They want to conquer this system. We want to repair our ship and leave. Robin rubbed his face with his hands, feeling the stubble on his chin. So, let me get this straight. You have an evil stepmother figure named Sable, who wants to use the kid to blow up the neighborhood. You want to stop her, and I am just the guy who opened the door. Essentially, Juniper chimed in, picking up Robin's coffee mug and inspecting the mold culture with genuine scientific interest. Though evil stepmother is a reductionist term, Matron Sable is a visionary. She is just morally flexible. Robin felt a sudden wave of self-consciousness. He was standing in his thermal underwear and a tattered flight suit facing down two alien warrior women who looked like they had been carved from marble. He shifted his weight. Stop looking at me like that, Robin snapped, seeing Seraphine's eyes narrow as she looked him up and down. Like what? Seraphine asked. Like I am a biology experiment gone wrong, Robin said. I know I look rough. I have been living on freeze-dried rations and recycled water for years. But I promise you, I showered. Recently. Like this week. Juniper looked up from the mug, her nose wrinkling slightly. We are not judging your hygiene, Robin. Though the bacterial count on this vessel is impressive. We are analyzing your stress hormones. Your pheromones are spiking. You smell like terrified prey. We assess threats by biological output, Seraphine added coolly. And right now you are emitting enough adrenaline to power a small shuttle. You are terrified. I am cautious, Robin corrected, straightening his spine. There is a difference. And for the record, in human culture, telling someone they smell like fear is considered rude. Usually, we just offer them a mint. Suddenly, a low moan came from the cot. Robin moved instantly, forgetting his fear. Forgetting the two warriors. He was at Koa's side in a second. The boy's eyes fluttered open. The amber irises were blown wide, panic flooding them, as he registered the unfamiliar surroundings. Then Koa saw Seraphine. The reaction was visceral. The boy scrambled backward, pressing himself against the wall, his claws extending his tail puffed out to twice its normal size. He let out a low, growling hiss, a sound that was entirely wolf. Seraphine took a step forward, her hand instinctively going to the hilt of the blade at her waist. It was a trained reaction to aggression. "Stop!" Robin shouted. He did not reach for a weapon. He stepped between Seraphine and Koa. He turned his back on the armed alien commander, exposing his defenseless spine to her, and held his hands out toward the boy. "Hey, hey!" Robin's voice dropped an octave, becoming soft, rhythmic. "Look at me, eyes on me, Koa, you are safe. Nobody is going to hurt you." The boy was shaking his eyes, darting over Robin's shoulder to the warriors. "They are big, I know," Robin whispered. "And they look scary, but they are just house guests. Very rude house guests who broke my toaster. But they are not going to touch you, I promise." Seraphine froze. Her hand hovered over her weapon, but she did not draw it. She watched the human. He was frail compared to her kind. His bone density was laughable. She could snap him in half with one hand, and yet he had placed himself directly in the line of fire to shield a creature that was technically his enemy's biological weapon. She had studied humans in the data archives. They were described as selfish, chaotic, and prone to violence. But this was something else. "He is hyperventilating," Juniper whispered to Seraphine. "The human. His heart rate is 140. He is terrified of us, but he is not moving." "I see that," Seraphine murmured. Slowly, Koa's growling subsided. He looked at Robin, then reached out a tentative hand to grip Robin's shirt. Robin covered the small, clawed hand with his own. "That is it," Robin said. "Just breathe. In and out. Like me." Once Koa had settled, Robin turned back to Seraphine. His expression was hard. The Joker was gone. "You are not taking him," Robin said. "I do not care about your debt or your war. He is a child. If you drag him out into the cold onto a ship full of people who want to use him as a battery, you are no better than this Sable woman." "We do not have a choice," Seraphine said, though her voice lacked its earlier steel. "If Sable gets him, thousands die. If the beacon activates, the system burns. Then we turn it off," Robin said. "It is not a switch, Robin," Juniper said, tapping her datapad. "It is integrated into his neural cortex. Removing it requires surgical precision that we do not have in the field. And we cannot do it here. Your medical bay consists of a box of bandages and a bottle of aspirin." Robin looked at the boy, then at the display screens on the wall. He was thinking fast. "You said you have a ship, a ring." "Yes," Seraphine said. "Is there a medical facility that is not in the middle of a war zone?" Robin asked. Seraphine hesitated. "There is the landing edge. It is a detached module, currently grounded about 10 miles north of here. We use it as a forward operating base. It has a Class A medical suite. We could suppress the signal there." "Then we go there," Robin said. "I will take him." "You," Seraphine raised an eyebrow. "You will not make it 10 yards on the flats with Sable's drones hunting." "I know the terrain," Robin argued. "I know where the salt crust is thick enough to hold a rover, and where it is just a trap waiting to swallow you. You have the firepower. I have the map. We work together." "And why would I trust you?" Seraphine asked. "You are an unknown variable." "Because I am the only one he trusts," Robin said, gesturing to Koa, who was currently clutching Robin's sleeve like a lifeline. "If you try to force him, his stress levels will spike. And if his stress spikes, does the beacon signal get stronger?" Juniper looked at her readings and winced. "Actually, yes. Adrenaline accelerates the signal output. If he panics, he becomes a louder target." Seraphine looked at Robin. She saw the stubborn set of his jaw. She realized she was not going to win this argument without violence, and violence would only endanger the mission. "Fine," Seraphine said. "We move to the landing edge. But you come with us. You are responsible for keeping him calm, and if you try to run—" I know," Robin waved a hand. "Dawn debt. Eternal damnation. I get the picture." The preparation for departure was efficient and terrifying. Robin watched as the 300 warriors outside shifted formation. They did not just walk. They flowed. It was like watching liquid mercury pour across the landscape. They formed a protective phalanx, a moving corridor of shields and blades. Robin drove his rover, a battered 6-wheeled vehicle that looked like a tank had a baby, with a tractor. Patch, the drone, was plugged into the dashboard, complaining loudly about the suspension. "This vehicle is not rated for combat transport," Patch whined. "My gyroscope is already misaligned. I feel nauseous. Can drones feel nausea? I am updating my existential database." "Hold on, Patch," Robin said, gripping the wheel. Inside the rover, it was cramped. Koa sat in the passenger seat, strapped in with a 5-point harness that looked comically large on him. Seraphine and Juniper sat in the back, squeezed between crates of geological samples. "Your vehicle smells like old beans," Juniper noted, wrinkling her nose. "It is vintage aroma," Robin said, steering the rover out of the garage and onto the salt flats. And those beans were delicious. As they moved, the phalanx of warriors moved with them, matching the rover's speed perfectly. They ran with a loping, tireless gait. "They are incredible," Robin admitted, watching them through the reinforced glass. "Do they ever get tired?" "They are engineered for endurance," Seraphine said. She was cleaning her blade with a cloth, her movements precise. "We are not born Robin. We are decanted, designed for specific roles. The vanguard are built to run and to fight." "Sounds lonely," Robin said. "Being built for just one thing." "It is purposeful," Seraphine countered. "Clarity of purpose brings peace. Humans, you seem to spend your whole lives wondering what you are supposed to be. It looks exhausting." "It is," Robin laughed dryly. "That is why we invented hobbies and midlife crises." "What is a midlife crisis?" Juniper asked, leaning forward. "It is when a human realizes they are halfway to death, and they haven't done anything cool yet," Robin explained. "So they buy a fast car, or grow a ponytail, or move to a frozen moon to live alone." Seraphine looked at him sharply. "Is that what this is, a crisis?" "Maybe," Robin set his eyes on the horizon. "Or maybe I just got tired of people." "And yet," Seraphine said softly, "you opened the door for the boy." Robin glanced at Koa. The boy was staring out the window, mesmerizing by the glint of the sun on the warrior's armor. "Yeah, well, exceptions to every rule." They drove in silence for a while. The sun was climbing higher, and the light on the salt flats was blinding. Robin had to lower the polarized shields on the windows. "So," Robin said, trying to break the tension, "you guys are cats. He is a wolf. Is there a bird person somewhere I should know about, a hamster warlord?" "The lupine and the feline are the two dominant genetic strains of our sector," Seraphine said, ignoring the joke. "We were once allies. The ring ship was a joint project, a generational arc designed to find a new home. But when resources got scarce, instincts took over." "Cats and dogs," Robin muttered. "Classic." "It is not about species," Seraphine said sternly. "It is about ideology. The lupine believe in dominance through strength. Matron Sable believes in dominance through control. She took the lupine teachings and twisted them. She believes that because she has the Howl Key, she has the divine right to rule." "And you?" Robin asked. "What do you believe in?" Seraphine looked at her reflection in the blade. "I believe in keeping my sisters alive. That is enough." Suddenly, the rover lurched violently to the left. "Warning!" Patch screamed. "Gravitational anomaly detected. The ground is moving." Robin fought the steering wheel as the salt flats ahead of them didn't just crack, they shifted. A massive rift opened up, but it didn't fall down. The chunks of ice and salt floated upward, suspended in the air by a distorted gravity field. "The beacon," Juniper shouted, checking her datapad. "It is spiking. The signal is hitting the resonant frequency of the planet's crust." Robin looked over at Koa. The boy was gasping, clutching his throat. The collar was blazing with white light, blindingly bright. "Dawn Shear." Seraphine set her voice tight. "The reality around the signal is being torn. Drive, Robin, drive through it." "Drive through the floating rocks," Robin yelled. "Sure, why not?" He slammed on the accelerator. The rover roared, its tires spinning on the slick salt before finding traction. They shot forward, weaving between floating boulders of ice the size of houses. The laws of physics seemed to be taking a coffee break. Light bent in weird arcs. Sound became distorted. The roar of the engine sounded like a whisper, then a scream. "Incoming!" Pat shrieked. "Aerial bogies, 12 o'clock high." Out of the distorted sky, black shapes descended. They were sleek, predatory drones shaped like arrowheads. They didn't have propellers. They moved on silent, anti-grav thrusters. "Sable's hunters," Seraphine hissed. She kicked open the rear door of the moving rover. "What are you doing?" Robin shouted. "Buying you time," Seraphine yelled. "Juniper, keep the boys shielded. Robin, get them to the landing edge." Seraphine leaped from the moving rover. She landed on the shifting salt with impossible grace, sliding to a stop. She drew 2 long blades, the violet energy crackling along their edges. The 300 warriors broke formation. They didn't scatter. They expanded. They formed a kill box around the drones. Robin watched in the rearview mirror as the battle erupted. It was a chaotic ballet. The drones fired beams of red plasma, melting the salt into glass. The cat warriors moved faster than the eye could follow, leaping off floating rocks, slicing through the drones with their energy blades. But more drones were coming. "They are targeting the rover," Juniper yelled. "They are locking onto the caller's signature." A drone swooped low, ignoring the warriors, heading straight for Robin's windshield. "Duck!" Robin screamed. He jerked the wheel hard to the right. The rover drifted sliding sideways. The drone's plasma blast missed the cabin by inches, scorching the paint. Robin saw a ramp of ice ahead, a piece of the crust that had been jutted upward by the shear. "Patch!" Robin yelled. "Reroute all power to the rear wheels. Cut the life support if you have to." "I object to suffocating," Patch argued. But the drone beeped a confirmation. Robin hit the ramp. The rover launched into the air. For a second, they were flying. Robin looked down and saw the drone passing underneath them. "Juniper the crate!" Robin shouted. "What? Throw the crate of geological samples." Now Juniper didn't ask questions. She kicked the heavy crate of rocks out the back door. Gravity took hold. The crate fell smashing directly into the drone beneath them. The drone spiraled out of control and exploded in a ball of fire. The rover landed with a bone-jarring crunch, bouncing twice before stabilizing. "Nice shot," Juniper breathed, looking at Robin with wide eyes. "You used a box of rocks to take down a combat drone." "I am a geologist," Robin panted, wrestling the vehicle back under control. "I solve problems with rocks. It is what we do." Behind them, the battle raged. Seraphine was a whirlwind. Robin saw her leap onto the back of a low-flying drone drive, her sword into its engine core, and backflip off as it detonated. But there were too many of them. "We have to help her," Koa whimpered. It was the first time he had spoken since the cabin. "We can't," Robin said, though it tasted like ash in his mouth. "She gave us an opening. We have to take it." He gunned the engine, speeding toward a metallic structure visible in the distance, the landing edge. They reached the structure, a massive silver wedge embedded in the ice, minutes later. Robin skidded the rover to a halt and killed the engine. "Get him inside," Robin told Juniper. "Start the suppression sequence." "Where are you going?" Juniper asked, unbuckling Koa. Robin reached under his seat and pulled out a flare gun. It was old orange and looked like a toy. "I am going back," Robin said. "You will die," Juniper said bluntly. "Maybe," Robin said. "But she is out there fighting for my passenger. And I pay my debts." He jumped out of the rover. He didn't run toward the battle. He ran toward a cluster of steam vents, about 200 yards away. The salt flats were riddled with them pressure valves for the geothermal activity below. He waited. He watched Seraphine fighting a losing battle against 3 massive drones. She was backed against a ridge of ice, her armor scored and smoking. Robin raised the flare gun. He didn't aim at the drones. He aimed at the ground right next to the largest steam vent. "Hey, over here, you flying tin cans!" Robin screamed into his comms. The drones paused. Their sensors picked up the new thermal signature. They turned toward him. Robin fired. The flare hit the vent cap. The magnesium burned hot enough to melt the seal. With a roar that shook the ground, the vent exploded. A geyser of superheated steam and brine shot 500 feet into the air. The sudden release of pressure destabilized the ground beneath the drones. The salt crust collapsed. Two of the drones were swallowed by the earth, crushed by the shifting ice and the force of the geyser. The third drone wavered its sensors, blinded by the steam. Seraphine didn't hesitate. She launched herself through the steam cloud, a silhouette of vengeance. She sliced the third drone in half, clean through the chassis. Silence fell over the flats, broken only by the hiss of the geyser. Robin stood there panting, his flare gun smoking. Seraphine walked out of the steam. She was limping slightly. Her helmet was gone, lost in the fight. Her face was streaked with soot and purple alien blood. She stopped in front of Robin. She looked at the geyser, then at the flare gun, then at him. "You collapsed a geothermal vent," she said. "That was reckless." "It was effective," Robin said, his hands shaking as the adrenaline crash hit him. "You could have killed yourself," Seraphine said. She stepped closer. The gap between them was small now. "You were outnumbered," Robin said. "I figured you could use a distraction." Seraphine looked at him for a long time. The cold, imperious commander was gone. In her place was a warrior who looked tired and perhaps for the first time impressed. "You are a strange creature, Robin," she said softly. "You run toward fire." "Only when I have to," Robin said. She reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. Her gauntlet was heavy, but her touch was careful. "You are not just a carrier," she said. "You are a combatant. I misjudged you." "Do not get used to it," Robin said, trying to smile. "I am mostly just a guy who wants breakfast." Seraphine's eyes softened. "We should go. The boy is waiting." "Yeah," Robin said. "Let's go." As they walked back to the landing edge side by side, Robin noticed something. The way she walked, she was favoring her left leg, but she matched her pace to his. She was slowing down for him. And for the first time in 10 years, the silence of Rill didn't feel so heavy. Inside the landing edge, Juniper had Koa hooked up to a diagnostic machine. The collar's light was dim, pulsing steadily. "I have stabilized the signal," Juniper said as they entered. "But I cannot turn it off. The encryption is too complex. It is evolving." "Evolving?" Seraphine asked, leaning against the doorframe. "The code," Juniper said. "It is rewriting itself. It is learning. And it is listening." "Listening to what?" Robin asked. Juniper looked at Robin. "To you. The signal spikes when you are in danger. It calms down when you are safe. It is not just broadcasting to the sun, Robin. It is tethered to you." Robin looked at Koa. The boy was awake, watching him. "Why me?" Robin whispered. "I do not know," Seraphine said. "But Sable knows. That is why she didn't just bomb the cabin. She needs you alive. You are part of the key." Robin felt a cold chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. He wasn't just a bystander anymore. He was a participant. "Well," Robin said, sitting down heavily on a crate. "That complicates things." "It simplifies them," Seraphine said. She walked over and stood next to him, her presence solid and reassuring. "It means we protect you, too." Robin looked up at her. "I thought I was just the debt payer." "Debts change," Seraphine said. "And so do allies." Outside, the sun reached its zenith. The light was blinding, unforgiving. But inside the metal walls, amidst the hum of machinery and the breathing of 300 warriors guarding the perimeter, there was a strange, fragile sense of safety. But deep down, Robin knew it wouldn't last. The dawn had only just begun. The transition from the blinding white expanses of the Rill, salt flats to the interior of the landing edge was less like walking into a building and more like being swallowed by a bioluminescent leviathan. The airlock cycled shut behind them, cutting off the howling wind with a finality that made Robin's ears pop. The interior did not look like any ship Robin had ever studied in his manuals. It was organic, skeletal, and terrifyingly beautiful. The corridor stretched out before them, like the ribcage of a massive silver beast. The walls were lined with curved metal struts that resembled fish bones, interlocking in a pattern that defied standard engineering geometry. Between these metallic ribs, a soft, pulsating light flowed beneath a semi-transparent membrane, shifting from deep indigo to pale violet in a rhythmic cycle. "It is breathing," Robin whispered, his hand hovering near the wall, but not daring to touch it. "The ship is actually breathing?" "It is atmospheric regulation," Seraphine corrected, though her voice lacked its usual sharp edge. She walked ahead, her boots making no sound on the smooth, yielding floor material. "The Velvet Eclipse is a biosynthetic construct. The hull circulates thermal fluid just as a body circulates blood. It is efficient." Robin looked up at the ceiling where the lights gathered in a central spine that seemed to stretch on forever. "If my house had a hallway like this, I would get lost in my own living room. I would probably starve to death looking for the bathroom." "We navigate by instinct," Juniper said from behind him. She was pushing a floating gravity stretcher, where Koa sat looking around with wide, fearful eyes. "The ship sings to us. You just have to know how to listen." "Right," Robin muttered, adjusting his grip on his resource pack. "Sings, of course, my coffee maker just grumbles." They moved deeper into the structure. The air here was rich, smelling faintly of ozone and crushed mint, a stark contrast to the sterile, recycled air of Robin's cabin. But beneath the beauty, there was tension. The 300 warriors, the phalanx, that had escorted them, had peeled off at the entrance to secure the perimeter, leaving Robin, Koa Seraphine, and Juniper alone in the vast, echoing belly of the beast. They arrived at a section that Juniper called the Med Bay, though it looked more like a cathedral dedicated to light. In the center of the room stood a circular dais, surrounded by hovering rings of data. "Place him there," Seraphine ordered. Juniper guided the gravity stretcher to the dais. Koa scrambled off and sat on the platform, pulling his knees to his chest. He looked small against the towering machinery. The collar around his neck was pulsing faster, now, a frantic beat that matched the anxious flickering of the room's ambient lighting. Juniper tapped her datapad, and the holographic rings spun, scanning the boy. "The beacon is active," she announced, her brow furrowed. "But it is not just transmitting coordinates, Commander. Look at this neural feedback loop." She projected a hologram into the air. It showed a wireframe of Koa's brain with the collar appearing as a parasitic red mass entangled with his brainstem. "It is syncing with him," Juniper said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It is not just a transmitter, it is a bridge. The beacon is using his neural pathways to process the signal." "He is not just carrying the key, Seraphine. He is the living gate." Robin stepped forward, looking at the hologram. "What does that mean in plain English, please? My degree is in geology, not astroneurology." Seraphine turned to him. Her face was grim. "It means that if we try to forcibly remove the collar, it will lobotomize him. And it means that if the signal completes its cycle, it will not just open a door for weapons. It will rewrite the local reality." "Rewrite reality," Robin repeated. "You mean the dawn shear?" "The dawn shear is just the engine sputtering," Seraphine said. She walked to the edge of the room, looking at a blank wall that suddenly became transparent at her approach, revealing the salt flats outside. "We are here to prevent the dawn loop." Robin joined her at the window. Outside, the landscape was distorted. The floating rocks they had driven past were now frozen in midair, surrounded by a haze of shimmering light. "The loop," Seraphine continued, "is a failsafe. If the ring ship cannot stabilize its connection to the star, it resets the timeline of the immediate area to the moment of dawn. It buys the ship time to recalibrate. But for organic minds, the reset is catastrophic. The body remains, but the memory is wiped clean. You live the same morning over and over, losing yourself a little more each time until there is nothing left but a shell. Robin felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. So if we fail, we are stuck in Groundhog Day, but with brain damage. I do not know what a groundhog is, Seraphine said. But yes, we cat warriors are trained to resist the memory purge. We use mental anchors. But you and the boy you would be hollowed out within 3 cycles. Robin looked back at Koa. The boy was watching him, his tail twitching nervously. The trust in those amber eyes was heavier than the gravity of the moon. He is scared, Robin said quietly. He should be, Seraphine replied. He is the fuse on a bomb. No, Robin said. He walked back to the dais and sat down on the edge, ignoring Juniper's warning look. He was now eye level with Koa. Hey, kid, Robin said. Koa flinched, but he didn't pull away. This place is pretty loud, huh? Robin said, keeping his voice low and steady. Lots of lights. Beeping noises. Reminds me of a carnival I went to once. I ate too much cotton candy and threw up on a clown. It was a tragedy. The clown never forgave me. Koa blinked. He tilted his head slightly. The frantic pulsing of the collar slowed down just a fraction. You like stories? Robin asked. I have 1,000,000 of them. Most of them are lies, but the good kind of lies. Like the time I told Patch that he was actually a disguised toaster oven. He spent 3 days trying to brown a slice of bread on his exhaust port. A small hiccuping sound escaped Koa's throat. It might have been a laugh. See, Robin smiled. We are okay. These ladies are just trying to figure out how to turn off your nightlight. You just focus on me. Think about snow. Soft, quiet snow. Not this angry salt out here. As Robin spoke, weaving a tapestry of nonsense and soothing tones, the red mass on the hologram began to recede. The neural spikes leveled out. Juniper stared at her datapad. His cortisol levels are dropping. The synchronization is stabilizing. How are you doing that? I am boring him to sleep, Robin said over his shoulder. It is a gift. Ask any date I had in my 20s. Seraphine watched him. She saw the way Robin's shoulders were hunched, protective, blocking the boy from the view of the machinery. She saw the way his hand rested near Koa's knee, not holding, just offering presence. It is not boredom, Seraphine murmured to herself. It is care. The system recognizes a non-hostile presence. Commander, Juniper's voice snapped back to professional urgency. Proximity alert. Internal sensors. Sector 4 ventilation shafts. Seraphine spun around her hand, flying to her blade. Sable. They bypassed the external perimeter, Juniper said, her fingers flying across the controls. They are using microdrones to cut through the thermal exhaust ports. They are inside the hull. How many? Seraphine demanded. 6 signatures, elite stealth units. They are not here for a siege, Commander. They are here for a snatch and grab. They want the boy, Robin realized, standing up and putting himself between Koa and the door. Can you lock this room? I am trying, Juniper said. But they are hacking the local nodes. The door mechanism is fighting me. The blast doors at the far end of the medbay began to shudder. Sparks rained down as a plasma cutter sliced through the locking mechanism. We cannot hold this room, Seraphine said. We need to move. To the cradle arc. The security encryption there is independent of the outer hull. Run, Robin asked. I am good at running. I have been practicing my whole life. Go, Seraphine ordered. Juniper, take the point. I will hold the rear. They sprinted out of the medbay just as the blast doors blew inward. Through the smoke, Robin saw sleek, black armored figures moving with terrifying speed. These were not the standard drones. These were lupine elites, tall and wolf-like in their movement-wielding energy pikes. Left, Juniper shouted, leading them down a narrow maintenance corridor. The ship seemed to be waking up around them. The lights flashed red. Steam vented from the walls. They turned a corner and ran straight into a deadlock. A heavy security shutter was descending, blocking their path. "It is a containment protocol," Juniper yelled, slamming her hand against the control panel. "It thinks we are the intruders, access denied." The shutter was halfway down. Behind them, the sound of heavy boots echoed on the metal floor. The elites were closing in. "Open!" Robin shouted at the door. It was pure desperation, a yell born of panic. "Open the damn door!" He didn't touch the panel. He didn't have a code. He just yelled, and the door stopped. For a split second, the heavy metal slab froze. Then, with a groan of protesting hydraulics, it reversed. It shot back up into the ceiling, the lights on the frame turning from red to a welcoming blue. Juniper stared at the door, then at Robin. "How did you move?" Seraphine shoved Robin forward. They scrambled through the opening. As soon as Seraphine cleared the threshold, the door slammed shut behind them, sealing with a heavy, final thud. A second later, they heard the dull thuds of energy pikes hammering against the other side. They were safe. For the moment. They collapsed in the hallway, gasping for breath. Koa was clinging to Robin's back, shivering. Seraphine stood up slowly, her breathing controlled. She walked over to Robin, who was leaning against the wall, trying to restart his heart. She loomed over him, her eyes glowing with suspicion. "What was that?" she asked. "What was what?" Robin wheezed. "The running, the screaming, the near-death experience." "The door," Seraphine said. "Juniper could not open it. The system was in lockdown. You yelled at it, and it obeyed." "Why?" "Coincidence," Robin suggested weakly. "Maybe the system rebooted right at that second." "The lights turned blue," Juniper noted, checking her datapad history. "That is the color for command clearance authorization. Robin, do you have a genetic key you are not telling us about?" "I am a human from Earth," Robin said, spreading his hands. "My ancestors were farmers and accountants. The only thing I have authorization for is a library card, and even that is expired." Seraphine studied him. She looked for deception, but all she saw was genuine confusion and fear. "We will discuss this later," Seraphine said. "We need to keep moving. The cradle arc is 2 levels down." They moved more cautiously, now sticking to the shadows of the fishbone structure. The ambush had shaken them. The ship felt less like a sanctuary and more like a trap. They found a temporary shelter in a small alcove filled with conduit pipes. It was tight. Seraphine and Robin were pressed close together, with Koa squeezed between them and Juniper guarding the entrance. "Why do you do it?" Seraphine asked suddenly. Her voice was barely a whisper in the dark. Robin looked at her. In the dim light, the harsh angles of her face were softened. She looked tired. "Do what?" "Shield him," Seraphine said. "Back in the cabin, in the medbay. Even now. You put your body between him and the threat. You are fragile, Robin. One hit from a plasma pike and you are vapor. Yet you act like you are made of armor." Robin looked down at Koa, who had fallen into a fitful doze against his chest. "I do not know," Robin admitted. "Instinct, I guess." "That is not a human instinct," Seraphine said. "Self-preservation is your primary drive." "Maybe I am bad at being human," Robin said with a small shrug. "Look, I have spent 10 years alone on this rock. I talked to a drone. I named the rocks. I forgot what it sounded like to have someone answer me. When this kid showed up, he needed me. Not my supplies, not my data. Me. If I turn away from that, if I leave a child to be a weapon, then who am I? Just a guy waiting to die in the cold. If I do that, I am not me anymore." Seraphine was silent. She looked at his hand, which was resting protectively on Koa's head. "Identity," she mused. "We cat warriors are given our names after our first battle. Before that, we are just numbers. We earn our self through violence. You define yourself through this. Through stupidity, Robin offered a self-deprecating smile. Through compassion, Seraphine corrected. A tremor ran through the ship, another shockwave from the dawn shear outside. The conduit pipes rattled. Robin flinched his hand instinctively, shooting out to brace himself against the wall. His hand landed on Seraphine's hand instead. Her skin was cool, smooth, and hard like polished stone. He froze. She froze. For a second, neither of them moved. It was a contact that broke a dozen protocols of her caste. A warrior does not touch a civilian. A feline does not touch a human. Robin cleared his throat, but he didn't pull his hand away immediately. I do not know if your culture has rules about holding hands to keep from falling over. Seraphine looked at their hands. Her fingers, tipped with lethal claws, were motionless beneath his palm. We have rules for everything, she said. And for this? Robin asked, his heart beating a little faster, and not from the running. Seraphine looked up, meeting his eyes. The emerald glow of her irises seemed to swirl. It is allowed, she said softly. For stability. Right, Robin said. Stability. But do not get ideas, she added, though there was no heat in the warning. If you try to pet me, I will remove your fingers. Noted, Robin grinned. No petting. Strictly professional hand-holding. He pulled his hand back slowly. The air between them felt charged different. The barrier of alien invader and hostage had thinned, replaced by something fragile and new. Clear, Juniper whispered from the entrance. The patrol is past. The path to the Cradle Ark is open. They moved out, the moment stored away, but not forgotten. The Cradle Ark was the heart of the ship. It was a spherical chamber, vast enough to hold a city block. The walls were lined with thousands of crystalline nodes humming with energy. In the center of the sphere, suspended in a gravity-null field, was a massive, rotating holographic map of the Rill system. This is the navigation core, Juniper said, her voice echoing in the vast space, and the memory bank. She led them to a console near the edge of the sphere. If we can interface Koa's collar with the cradle directly, we can create a feedback loop that dampens the beacon. We can lull it to sleep. Do it, Seraphine said, taking up a guard position. Juniper connected a cable from the console to the port on Koa's collar. The boy whimpered, but Robin held his shoulder, murmuring soft reassurances. As the connection established, the central hologram flickered. The map of Rill zoomed in. It showed the salt flats, and on the flats it showed lights, hundreds of them. What are those? Robin asked, stepping closer to the projection. They are energy nodes, Juniper said. Part of the ancient planetary grid. Robin squinted. The pattern looked familiar. He pointed to a bright light near the center of the cluster. That is where my cabin is. Exactly where my cabin is. He looked at other lights. And that one is the old mining outpost I scavenged last year. And that one is the crash site of the probe. He stepped back, a cold realization washing over him. They are not random, Robin whispered. My cabin. I did not build it there. It was a prefab structure left by the previous expedition. I just moved in. The nodes form a circuit, Juniper said, analyzing the data. A receiver array. Robin, your cabin is not just a house. It is a focal point. It sits directly on top of a geomagnetic junction. Robin felt the blood drain from his face. So, I have been living on top of a gigantic antenna for 10 years. It explains why the beacon tethered to you, Seraphine said, turning to look at him. You are soaked in the planet's resonance. To the collar you feel like home. Or, a voice boomed from the shadows. He feels like a target. They spun around. Standing on the upper gantry of the sphere, looking down at them, was a figure clad in white armor that shone like bone. She was older than Seraphine, her fur streaked with gray, but her stance was one of absolute power. Matron Sable, Seraphine hissed. Sable did not have a weapon drawn. She simply stood there, flanked by two of her elites. "You have brought the key to the lock," Sable said, her voice smooth and terrible. "Thank you, Seraphine. You always were efficient." "I am not doing this for you," Seraphine spat. "It does not matter who you do it for," Sable smiled. "The result is the same." She raised her hand. She held a small device, a remote trigger. "The beacon was sleeping," Sable said. "Let us wake it up." She pressed the button. For a second, nothing happened. The cradle arc was silent. Then Koa screamed. It wasn't a cry of pain. It was a sound of pure energy. The collar flared white-hot. The cable connecting him to the console melted instantly. The holographic map turned red. A shockwave blasted out from the boy, knocking Robin and Juniper off their feet. Seraphine drove her blade into the floor to anchor herself. "He is broadcasting!" Juniper yelled over the roaring noise. "Full power! The dawn loop is initiating!" Robin scrambled toward Koa, but a wall of force pushed him back. The boy was floating now, suspended in the air, his eyes glowing with that terrible white light. "Koa!" Robin screamed. The boy looked down. For a fleeting second, the white light in his eyes receded, revealing the terrified amber underneath. He reached out a hand toward Robin. "Robin!" Then the light swallowed him. The entire ship groaned. The walls of the cradle arc began to rotate. Robin looked at his hands. They were becoming translucent. He could see the floor through his palms. "It is happening!" Seraphine yelled, fighting the wind of the energy storm. The memory purge focused Robin hold onto something real. Robin closed his eyes. He thought of the smell of coffee. He thought of the sound of Patch complaining. He thought of the way Seraphine's hand had felt in the dark. He forced his eyes open. He was not going to forget. Not today. "Sable?" Robin roared, his voice amplified by the strange acoustics of the room. "You want to fight? You got one." He grabbed the flare gun from his belt, the same one he had used on the flats. He didn't aim at Sable. He aimed at the massive spinning crystal node directly above Koa's head. "Do not," Juniper screamed. "You will destabilize the gravity well." "Good," Robin yelled. He pulled the trigger. The flare hit the crystal. It didn't shatter, it resonated. The heat of the flare caused the crystal to sing a piercing, discordant note. The harmony of the machine broke. The gravity field fluctuated. Koa dropped from the air like a stone. The blinding light vanished. Silence crashed back into the room. Sable looked down from the gantry, her expression shifting from arrogance to fury. "Insolent dirt scratcher!" she snarled. "Run!" Seraphine grabbed Robin and Koa, hauling them toward the emergency exit. They dove into the chute just as Sable's elites opened fire. Plasma bolts scorched the air where Robin's head had been a second before. They slid down the chute, tumbling into the darkness of the ship's lower levels, leaving the cradle arc and the furious matron behind. But as they fell, Robin felt a strange sensation in his chest. A vibration. The ship was humming. And this time, it wasn't singing to the boy. It was singing to him. And deep in the back of his mind, a door he didn't know existed began to unlock. The transition was not a crash nor a fall. It was a slide. It felt as though the universe had suddenly tilted on its axis, sending Robin sliding down a frictionless surface into a pool of cold purple ink. He gasped, jerking upright in his chair. "Battery at 4%, Patch droned from somewhere to his left. "I am legally obligated to inform you that if I freeze, my warranty is void." Robin blinked his heart, hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. The familiarity of the sentence washed over him, but it felt wrong. It felt stale, like a recording played one too many times. He looked around. He was back in the cabin, the main room. The coffee mug with the mold colony was sitting on the console, exactly where it had been when yesterday. An hour ago, Patch Robin said, his voice raspy. "How long have I been asleep?" "You were not asleep," Patch replied, Hovering into view, the drone's optical sensor whirred. You were staring at the wall for 3 minutes. I assumed you were having a midlife crisis. Again. Robin stood up. His legs felt heavy, but his mind felt light, terrifyingly porous. He looked at his hands. There was a smear of black grease on his thumb. He rubbed it, but it didn't come off. It was soot. "We were on the ship," Robin whispered. "The Velvet Eclipse, the Cradle Arc, the explosion." "Negative," Patch said. "We are in the cabin. Outside temperature is 40 below zero. Radiation levels are normal. You are hallucinating due to caffeine withdrawal." Robin rushed to the viewport. He scrubbed the frost away with his sleeve and looked out. The sun was rising. A thin, razor-sharp line of silver light was cutting across the eastern horizon. "No," Robin breathed. I saw this already," the airlock hissed. Robin spun around, grabbing the nearest heavy object, a wrench from the workbench. The door slid open. But it wasn't a monster. It wasn't Sable, it was Seraphine. She looked exactly as she had the first time, imposing, armored in dark gray helmet tucked under her arm. But there was a difference. Her eyes were not cold. They were wide, frantic, and filled with a terrifying recognition. She stepped inside, followed by Juniper, who was furiously tapping on her datapad. "Do not hit me with that wrench, Robin," Seraphine said, her voice tight. Robin lowered the tool slowly. "You remember." "I remember," Seraphine said. She walked past him, stripping off her gauntlets with shaking hands. "We are in the loop. Sable activated the Cradle Arc. She has reset the local timeline to the moment of dawn." "The dawn loop," Juniper said, her voice trembling. "It works. By the stars, it actually works. The timeline is folding back on itself. We are trapped in the first hour of the day." Robin looked at the cot. Koa was there, curled up under the blanket asleep. Just as he had been when Robin found him. But the collar around his neck was not glowing softly. It was dead dark. "Why is he asleep?" Robin asked. "He was awake. He was flying. His consciousness is rebooting," Juniper explained, plugging a cable into the wall monitor. "The loop resets physical positioning, but it fragments memory. The more we loop, the more we lose. It is like recording over a cassette tape. Eventually the audio becomes just noise." Robin felt a cold drop of sweat slide down his spine. "So we are stuck in Groundhog Day, but every time the alarm goes off, we get a little more dementia." "I still do not know what a groundhog is," Seraphine snapped. "But yes, that is the situation." She turned to face him. She reached out and grabbed his shoulders. Her grip was painful, desperate. "Listen to me, Robin. You are human. Your mind is not conditioned for this. We cat warriors undergo psychological hardening to resist temporal shifts. You do not. You are going to forget." "I have a good memory," Robin argued weakly. "I remember the periodic table." "You will forget," Seraphine insisted, shaking him slightly. "You will forget why we are here. You will forget the danger. You will forget me." The vulnerability in her voice stopped him cold. He looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the soot on her cheek that the loop hadn't erased. He saw the fear that she was trying to hide behind command protocols. "I won't forget," Robin said. "You will," Seraphine said. "So we have to make sure you remember what matters." She pulled a knife from her belt. It was a small, serrated blade. "Give me your arm." "Whoa!" Robin pulled back. "I am fond of my arms." "The body retains physical trauma even when the mind resets," Seraphine said rapidly. "It is a flaw in the loop's geometry. If I carve it, you will see it. You will ask why. It is an anchor." Robin hesitated, then rolled up his sleeve. "Make it legible. My handwriting is terrible." Seraphine didn't smile. She took his forearm and with surgical precision scratched a single word into the skin. It wasn't deep, just enough to sting enough to redness. "Trust." "Trust," Robin read, wincing. Trust who? Trust the pain, Seraphine said. And trust the one holding the knife. The world outside the window flashed white. A low booming sound, like a bell tolling from the bottom of the ocean, vibrated through the cabin. Cycle ending, Juniper screamed. Brace for reset. Robin looked at Koa. He looked at Seraphine. I will find you, he said. I am right here, Seraphine whispered. Then the purple light swallowed them. Robin woke up with a gasp. Battery at 4%, Patch said. Robin rubbed his eyes. His head felt like it was stuffed with cotton wool. He looked around the cabin. Everything was normal. Just another lonely morning on Rill. He stood up to get coffee. His arm itched. He looked down. On his forearm, crude and red, was the word trust. What the? Robin muttered. He touched the letters. They were fresh. He didn't remember doing this. Had he gotten drunk last night? He didn't have any alcohol. The airlock hissed. Panic flared in his chest, an instinctive animal reaction that seemed to bypass his brain entirely. He grabbed the wrench. The door opened. A tall, armored woman stepped in. Do not hit me with the wrench, she said. Robin froze. The words echoed in his head, layering over a memory he couldn't quite see. Who are you? I am Seraphine, she said. She looked exhausted. She walked straight up to him and pointed at his arm. Read it. Trust, Robin read. Trust me, she said. We have done this 6 times. We have to move. Now. The loops began to blur. Time became a liquid, viscous thing. Sometimes Robin woke up and remembered everything. Sometimes he woke up and didn't even remember his own name, until Juniper slapped a sensor patch onto his temple that shocked his synapses back into alignment. The anchor, Juniper called it. It was a crude headband made of copper wire and scavenged drone parts. It creates a static field that shields short-term memory. It is giving you a headache, I know, but it keeps the data from leaking out. It feels like I am wearing a microwave, Robin grumbled, adjusting the headset. They were in the rover again, driving across the salt flats. The landscape was broken. The dawn shear was getting worse. Chunks of the world were missing, just black voids, where the salt should be looking like corrupted data in a video game. We have to get back to the cabin, Robin said, driving by muscle memory. Why did we leave the cabin? Because we thought we could run, Seraphine said from the passenger seat. She was sharpening her blade. She did that every loop. It was her anchor. We were wrong. The cabin is the eye of the storm. We have to close the loop from the center. Matron Sable, Robin said the name, tasting like bile. She is doing this. She believes she is saving us, Seraphine said. She thinks that if she holds the dawn still, she can repair the engines of the ring ship without expending power. She wants to take us home. She just does not care if we are lobotomized when we get there. A benevolent tyrant, Robin muttered. The worst kind. He looked at Seraphine. In this loop, they had been fighting side by side for 3 hours. He felt a profound connection to her, a deep, resonant ache in his chest. But he knew that in 20 minutes the sun would hit the zenith, the bell would toll, and he would look at her with the eyes of a stranger. I hate this, Robin said softly. Hate what? Meeting you, Robin said. I have to meet you over and over again, and every time I have to learn to like you. It is exhausting. Seraphine stopped sharpening her blade. She looked at him. Do you like me? I think I might be starting to, Robin said, keeping his eyes on the road. Which is inconvenient, considering you are an alien warlord, and I am a guy who talks to a toaster. Seraphine reached out. She touched his hand on the gear stick. I remember, she said. I remember every loop. I remember you shouting at the door. I remember you holding the boy. I remember you collapsing the vent. You carry the baggage for both of us, Robin said. That is not fair. I am a warrior, Seraphine said. I am built to carry heavy things. She squeezed his hand. But it is getting heavier, Robin. I am scared that one time I will walk through that door and you will not just be confused. You will be hostile. You will shoot. And I will have to put you down. I won't, Robin promised. I wrote it on my arm. Skin remembers. Let us hope, Seraphine whispered. Loop number 12 or maybe 13. Juniper lost count was the worst. They were pinned down in a ravine of ice about 2 miles from the cabin. Sable's forces were not looping correctly. They were glitching. The elite soldiers would flicker in and out of existence, teleporting a few feet at a time. It made them nearly impossible to target. They are unstuck, Juniper yelled, firing her energy pistol at a shimmering blur. The causality is breaking down. Koa was huddled behind a rock, crying. The boy was degrading. He wasn't resetting as cleanly as the rest of them. He was remembering fragments of pain from every death, every restart. He looked old, his eyes sunken, his fur matted. We are pinned, Seraphine shouted. She had a plasma burn on her shoulder. We cannot move the boy. A squad of 3 lupine elites materialized on the ridge above them. They raised their pikes. They had a clear shot at Koa. Robin didn't think. He didn't check his notes. He didn't consult the anchor. He stood up. Hey! Robin screamed, waving his arms. Hey, you ugly space dogs, look at me! The elites turned. They were confused. A human, unarmored, standing in the open, it was tactically illogical. Robin, get down! Seraphine screamed. Come and get me! Robin yelled. He picked up a chunk of salt and threw it. It bounced harmlessly off the leader's armor. It was enough. The elites shifted their aim. 3 beams of red plasma seared the air, converging on Robin. He dove to the right behind a pillar of ice, but not fast enough. The shock wave threw him against the wall. He felt a rib crack. But the distraction worked. Seraphine moved. She was a blur of gray steel. She scaled the cliff face, in 2 bounds, her blade singing. She took the heads of the first 2 elites before they could realign. The third, she kicked off the ledge. Silence returned to the ravine. Seraphine dropped back down. She ran to Robin. He was wheezing, clutching his side. Did I get them? Seraphine looked at him, her eyes burning with a mixture of fury and awe. You are an idiot. A fragile, soft, suicidal idiot. Yeah. Robin grinned, blood on his teeth. But the kid is okay. Seraphine looked at Koa safe behind the rock. Then she looked back at Robin. Why? She asked. You do not even remember his name in this loop. I had to tell you 10 minutes ago. I do not know, Robin gasped. It just felt right, like I had done it before. Seraphine touched his face. Her claws retracted her fingertips gentle. Compassion, she whispered. It is not a memory. It is a reflex. I was wrong. Discipline is not the only strength. Glad you agree, Robin coughed. Now can we please fix time? My rib hurts and I would like to reset it. We are close, Juniper said, helping Robin up. The cabin is just over the ridge, but we need the 300. They reached the cabin as the sky began to turn a sickly, bruised yellow. The sun was stuck vibrating in the sky like a coin spinning on a table. The 300 cat warriors were there, but they were in chaos. The loop was scattering them. Some were standing in yesterday's formation. Some were repeating orders from an hour ago. They were out of sync. Sisters, Seraphine's voice boomed across the flats, amplified by her suit's speakers. Align, the warriors turned. They saw their commander. They saw the human bleeding from the ribs. They saw the wolf child. The geometry is broken, one of the lieutenants shouted. We cannot hold the jamming field. We do not need a field, Robin shouted, limping forward. We need a lens. He pointed at the cabin. My house. It sits on the magnetic junction. If you form the circle around it tight, shoulder to shoulder, you can focus the planet's energy into the structure. You can jumpstart the timeline. Oh, duh. He is right, Juniper said, looking at the readings. If we create a biofeedback loop with the warriors acting as conductors, we can force the beacon to discharge all its energy at once. We can break the loop. It will kill us, a warrior shouted. The feedback will fry our neural pathways. It might, Seraphine said. She walked to the center of the gathering. But if we do nothing, we fade away. We become ghosts in a broken morning. I would rather burn out than fade away. She looked at her sisters. Who stands with me? One by one the blades raised. 300 voices roared in unison. Form the ring, Seraphine ordered. The warriors moved. They tightened the circle around the small, battered cabin. They locked arms, their armor connecting, creating a solid wall of metal and flesh. Robin, Seraphine, Juniper, and Koa entered the cabin. This is it, Robin said. He looked at the moldy coffee cup. If this works, I am going to wash that mug. Priorities, Juniper muttered. They placed Koa on the central table. The boy was trembling. The collar was black dead. We need to wake it up one last time, Seraphine said. To overload it. How? Robin asked. Koa sat up. He looked at Robin. And for the first time in the loops, his eyes were clear. Perfectly, terrifyingly clear. He reached up and touched the collar with both hands. I am ready, Koa said. His voice was not the voice of a child. It was deep, resonant, layered with the echo of a machine. Robin stepped back. Koa. The child is sleeping, the voice said through Koa's mouth. I am the navigation mind. I have been listening, Robin. I have been watching you. You are the ship, Robin asked. I am the path, Koa said. You showed me that the path is not a straight line. It is a circle of care. The boy looked at Robin. You must hold me. When the energy hits, it will try to tear this body apart. You must hold it together. I will, Robin said. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around the small boy. He ignored the pain in his ribs. He ignored the fear. Seraphine, Robin said. Do it. Seraphine signaled the 300. Outside, the warriors began to chant. A low, thrumming sound. Their armor began to glow. The energy poured from them into the ground, into the magnetic junction, and up into the cabin. The room turned white. The collar on Koa's neck screamed. It wasn't a sound. It was a tear in the fabric of the world. Robin held on. He felt the heat rising. He felt his skin blistering. He felt the memories trying to rip themselves out of his head. Trust. 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 Hold, Seraphine's voice cut through the noise. She was holding onto Robin's shoulders, anchoring him as he anchored the boy. The timeline shuddered. The sun outside jerked forward once, twice. The yellow light turned to blinding white, then softened to the blue of afternoon. The dawn loop shattered. The energy dissipated with a crack of thunder that blew out every window in the cabin. Robin fell to his knees, still clutching Koa. Silence. Real, heavy, linear silence. Time, Patch whispered from the corner, his sensors spinning lazily. Time is progressing. It is 12:01 p.m. We made it to lunch. Robin laughed. It was a hysterical, broken sound. He looked at Koa. The boy was unconscious, breathing deeply. The navigation mind was gone. He was just a kid again. Seraphine slumped against the wall, sliding down until she hit the floor. She looked at Robin. We are still here, she said, sounding surprised. We are, Robin said. He looked at his arm. The word trust was still there, angry and red. A scar he would keep. Alert, Patch said, his tone dropping to 0. Proximity breach. Immediate. The light in the doorway darkened. They looked up. Standing in the shattered frame of the airlock was not a soldier. It was Matron Sable. She was not wearing armor. She was wearing ceremonial robes of white silk stained with soot. She looked ancient. She looked defeated. But in her hand, she held a device, a detonator. Behind her, beyond the ring of exhausted, collapsed warriors, the sky was filled with ships. Not drones, heavy cruisers. "You broke the loop," Sable said softly. Her voice was not angry. It was incredibly sad. "You chose chaos over preservation." "We chose life," Seraphine said, trying to stand but failing. "You chose a slow death," Sable corrected. "The system is failing. The ring ship cannot sustain itself without the beacon's energy." She stepped into the room. She looked at Koa, sleeping in Robin's arms. "I have an offer," Sable said. "A final one." She held up the detonator. "This is linked to the atmospheric stabilizers of the ring ship. If I press it, the ship vents its atmosphere. Everyone on board dies. My people. Your people. We all die." Robin tightened his grip on Koa. "You wouldn't." "I would," Sable said. "If I cannot save my species, I will grant them a merciful end. I will not let them starve in the dark." She extended her other hand. "Give me the boy," Sable said. "If I have the Howl key, I can try one last ignition. A controlled burst. It might save the ship, it might kill the boy, but it is a chance." "And if we refuse?" Robin asked. "Then I press this," Sable said. "And the dawn takes us all, permanently. Your memories, your history, your little cabin gone." Robin looked at Seraphine. She was barely conscious, but she shook her head slightly. "No." He looked at Koa, the boy who had trusted him when he had nothing. Robin looked at Sable. "You want the key?" Robin asked, standing up slowly, his legs shaking, his ribs burning. "I want survival," Sable said. "Funny," Robin said. "So do I." He took a step forward, not toward Sable, but placing himself firmly between her and the boy. But the price went up. The floorboards of the cabin did not just creak, they dissolved. One moment Robin was standing on the scuffed synthetic wood where he had paced for 10 years, and the next the molecular bonds of the floor simply unraveled. It was not a collapse. It was an opening. The magnetic junction beneath the cabin, supercharged by the focused will of 300 warriors and the resonance of the wolf child, finally revealed its true throat. They descended not into darkness, but into a blinding rhythmic pulse of violet light. The platform they stood on, a circular slab of the cabin floor, lowered smoothly, acting as an elevator into the bowels of the planet. Or rather, into the bowels of what lay buried in the planet. Robin gripped the railing of the platform, his knuckles white. To his left, Seraphine stood like a statue of bruised iron, her hand resting on the hilt of her broken blade. To his right, Juniper was frantically typing on her datapad, her goggles reflecting the abyss of machinery passing them by. And in the center, Koa stood. The boy was no longer trembling. He looked at the descending walls of crystal and circuitry with the gaze of a king returning to a castle he had forgotten he owned. "You know," Robin said, his voice echoing in the vast vertical shaft. "I always complained that this cabin lacked storage space. I thought I needed a basement for my winter gear. Turns out I was sitting on top of a cathedral." "It is not a cathedral," Juniper whispered, her voice trembling with scientific reverence. "It is the Star Heart, the central processing core of the ring ship. The cabin was just the camouflage cap on the exhaust port." "Great," Robin muttered. "I have been living in a quark." The platform came to a soft halt. They were in a chamber that defied the laws of Rill's geology. It was a perfect sphere, lined with millions of hexagonal panels that breathed with light. In the center of the room, suspended over a pit of pure energy, was a console shaped like a throne, but made of flowing mercury. And standing by the throne, waiting for them, was Matron Sable. She looked small against the backdrop of the colossal machine. The white silk of her robes was torn, and her face was lined with the exhaustion of 1,000 failed loops. But her eyes were burning with a terrifying clarity. "You took the long way down," Sable said. Her voice was not amplified, yet it filled the room, resonating from the walls themselves. "We had to knock," Robin said, stepping off the platform. He moved to stand in front of Koa, a reflex that had become as natural as breathing. You hold the detonator, Sable, but we hold the key. Sable smiled a thin, mirthless expression. Do you really think I need to force the boy? Robin, look at him. He wants to be here. He hears the song. Robin looked down. Koa was stepping forward, his eyes fixed on the Mercury throne. The boy reached out a hand, and the liquid metal of the console rippled in response, reaching back like a longing lover. It is time, Koa said. The voice was not Koa's. It was deep, layered with the harmonics of grinding tectonic plates. It was a voice that had not spoken in centuries. The entire team froze. Juniper dropped her datapad. Commander Seraphine, the boy said, turning his head slowly. Guardian of the Second Void, your vigilance is noted. Seraphine took a step back, her breath hitching. That is the prime designator. That is the title of the original captains. How does he know that? He knows, Juniper breathed, because he is not just carrying the data. He is the data. Sable nodded, stepping closer to the throne. The navigation mind. We thought it was software. We thought it was a drive we could plug in. But the ring ship is biological. To save the mind from the crash, the ship downloaded it into the most adaptable, organic format available. A child, she looked at Robin with a mixture of pity and hunger. That is why I cannot just kill you, Robin. The system is biological. It responds to life. But it responds to you specifically. The boy is the mind, but you are the biological trigger. The adrenaline, the heartbeat. The system will not accept the mind back until a carrier authorizes it. A carrier, Robin asked. I am a geologist. I look at rocks. You are a human, Sable corrected. A species known for irrational emotional attachments. The ship needs that. It needs an emotional catalyst to fuse the mind back into the core. She held out her hand, palm up. The detonator was still in her other hand, her thumb hovering over the button. Authorize it, Robin. Tell the boy to merge with the throne. The mind returns to the ship. The weapons activate. We destroy the blockage in the orbit and we go home. The boy ceases to be a boy, yes, but he becomes a god. Is that not a better fate than freezing on this rock? Robin looked at the throne. It looked cold. It looked hungry. He ceases to be a boy, Robin repeated. He becomes a component. He becomes the savior of two species. Sable screamed, her composure cracking. There are no children in war, Robin, only casualties or soldiers. That is where you are wrong, Robin said quietly. He took a step toward the throne. Sable's eyes lit up. Yes, do it. Robin stopped. He turned his back to the throne. He faced Sable. I said no. Sable's face twisted. Then you all die. Her thumb pressed down on the detonator. Nothing happened. Sable pressed it again. Harder. She shook the device. She looked at it in horror. The light on the detonator was dead. Juniper, Robin asked, not looking away from Sable. Signal jamming successful, Juniper said, holding up a small jury-rigged emitter she had pulled from her belt. I tuned it to the frequency of your toaster, actually. Short-range, high interference. Nothing wireless works in this room within 20 feet of me. Sable screamed a sound of pure animal frustration. She threw the useless detonator aside and drew a hidden energy dagger from her sleeve. She lunged at Robin. She was fast. Faster than a human. Robin tried to dodge, but he was exhausted, his ribs broken. He saw the blade coming for his throat. Then, a blur of gray steel intercepted the white silk. Seraphine caught Sable's wrist. The impact sounded like a gunshot. Seraphine did not use a weapon. She used her hand. She twisted, and Sable dropped the dagger. Seraphine shoved the matron back, placing herself firmly between the antagonist and Robin. Stand down, matron, Seraphine said. Sable panted, looking at her former subordinate. You defy your blood, you defy the survival of your kin for this human. This pet. He is not a pet, Seraphine said. Her voice was steady, resonating with a new kind of power. And I am not choosing him over our people. I am choosing a future where our people deserve to survive. Sentimental garbage, Sable spat. Love does not run engines, no, Seraphine said, glancing back at Robin. But it gives us a reason to turn them on. It was a confession. It was a battlefield declaration. Robin felt a warmth bloom in his chest that had nothing to do with the radiation of the core. Seraphine, Robin said softly. Stay behind me, she ordered, but her tone was gentle. I will handle her. But the room was not done with them. The Mercury throne began to boil. The mind Koa was reacting to the violence. The boy's eyes rolled back, glowing pure white. He began to float. Unauthorized conflict detected, the ancient voice boomed from the boy's throat. Core stability critical. Initiating emergency purge. The walls of the room turned red. The gravity shifted. Robin felt his feet leave the floor. He is losing control, Juniper yelled, grabbing onto a console to anchor herself. The mind is rejecting the biological shell. If he separates now without the carrier's lock, the energy release will vaporize the planet. Robin! Oi! Seraphine shouted, fighting to stay grounded, as Sable was thrown across the room by a gravity wave. You have to calm him. You have to talk to the system. Robin clawed his way through the air, pulling himself toward the floating boy. The energy in the room was tearing at him. He could feel his skin blistering. He could hear the screams of the 300 warriors above fighting the physical manifestation of the energy storm outside. He grabbed Koa's hand. The contact was electric. Instantly, Robin was not in the room. He was in the dark. He was floating in a void of memory. He saw the dawn. Not one dawn, but thousands. He saw them flashing by in a kaleidoscope of light. He saw the cabin. He saw it being built. But he didn't see himself building it. He saw machines building it. He saw a tank, a cryo-tank. And inside it was him. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. He saw the files. Project Carrier. Subject Human Male. Origin Earth Rescue. Status Memory Suppressed. Purpose Emotive Anchor. He wasn't a stranded geologist. He wasn't a lucky survivor. He had been found by the ring ship decades ago, drifting in a damaged escape pod. The ship, the biological entity, had saved him. But it had also used him. It needed a failsafe. It needed a biological component that possessed the one thing its creators lacked: illogical, stubborn, protective love. So it had built him a cabin. It had wiped his memory of the crash. It had given him a fake life, a drone to talk to, and a view of the salt flats. It had placed him exactly where it needed him, and it had waited. It waited for him to grow lonely. It waited for him to crave connection so deeply that when a child appeared, he would not ask questions. He would just open the door. He was not the hero. He was the lock. Robin gasped, pulling out of the vision. He was back in the red room, holding Koa's hand. He looked at the boy. He looked at Seraphine. I know, Robin whispered. I know what I am. Robin, Seraphine called out, seeing the look on his face. I am not real, Robin said, his voice cracking. My memory's my life here. It was all a setup. The ship made me to be the switch. No, Seraphine yelled over the roar of the machine. You are real. Your choices were real. The choice was engineered, Robin shouted back. Tears stung his eyes. I loved him because I was programmed to need him. Sable, recovering in the corner, laughed. Now, you see, you are just a tool human, just like the boy, so do your job, use the connection, force the boy into the throne, and end this. Robin looked at Koa. The boy was vibrating with pain. The mind was trying to tear itself out of the child's flesh. Robin had a choice. He could do what he was made to do. He could accept that he was a tool, merge the mind, save the ship, and let the boy disappear into the machine. It was the logical path. It was the path of the carrier. Or he could break the design. He looked at Seraphine. She was looking at him with terror. Not terror of dying, but terror of seeing him break. "I am not a tool," Robin whispered. He squeezed Koa's hand. "Hey," Robin said. He didn't speak to the mind. He spoke to the kid. "Hey, Koa, can you hear me?" The white eyes flickered. "Robin!" It was a small, scared voice buried under the God voice. "Yeah, it is me," Robin said. "Listen, I made you a promise. I promised you were safe. I promised you were just a kid." "The system demands." The mind tried to interrupt. "Shut up," Robin roared at the machine. "I am talking to my son." The word hung in the air. Son. He hadn't meant to say it. But as soon as it left his lips, the red light in the room stuttered. "Koa," Robin said, his voice softening. "You do not have to go into the chair. You do not have to be a map. You can just be Koa. You can like snow. You can hate salt. You can help me fix the toaster." "But the ship," Koa whispered. "It is dying." "Then we change it," Robin said. "We do not feed it your soul. We give it something else." Robin reached out with his other hand and grabbed the Mercury throne. He didn't try to dominate it. He didn't try to command it. He opened his mind. He didn't give it navigation data. He didn't give it coordinates. He gave it the feeling of drinking hot coffee while watching the snow. He gave it the sound of Seraphine's laugh. He gave it the feeling of holding a small hand in the dark. He gave it humanity. "Interface accepted," the room whispered. Not a boom. A whisper. The red light turned to a soft, warm gold. "Restructuring protocols," the system announced. "Weapon systems offline. Navigation standby. Habitation mode maximum priority." The Mercury throne stopped boiling. It solidified into a simple, comfortable shape. A chair. Koa dropped gently to the floor. The white light faded from his eyes. He collapsed into Robin's arms. "You did it," Juniper gasped, checking her datapad. "You did not activate the drive. You turned the ship into a house. A giant orbiting house." Sable stared at the console. "You disarmed us," she whispered. "We are defenseless." "No," Robin said, lifting Koa up. He looked at Seraphine. "We are home. And anyone who wants to take this home has to go through us." Sable sank to her knees. Her war was over, not because she lost a battle, but because her battlefield had been turned into a living room. "There are no children in war," she repeated, her voice hollow. "But perhaps there is no war where there are children." The room stabilized. The gravity returned to normal. Robin looked at Seraphine. He felt light. The heavy burden of his purpose was gone. He wasn't a carrier anymore. He was just Robin. "I am sorry," Seraphine said, walking toward him. "I did not know. About your origin." "It does not matter," Robin said. "Maybe I was made to do this. But the choice to not pull the trigger, that was mine. That was all mine." Seraphine reached out and took his hand. "Yes, it was." She looked at him with a vulnerability he had never seen. "I was afraid," she admitted. "I was afraid that a creature like me, a weapon, could not be loved by a creature like you. I thought I was unworthy." Robin squeezed her hand. "Seraphine, look at us. I am a test tube human made by a spaceship. You are a bioengineered warrior. The kid is a navigation drive in a fur coat. Nobody is worthy here. We are all just broken parts that fit together." He smiled, tired but real. "There is only staying or leaving." "I am staying," Seraphine smiled back. It was blinding. "Then I am staying too." The ascent back to the surface was silent but peaceful. When the floorboards knit themselves back together, the cabin was quiet. The wind outside had stopped. Robin walked to the door and opened it. The dawn had passed. The sun was high in the sky, a bright, cheerful yellow. There was no loop, no reset. Just a Tuesday. Outside, the 300 warriors were sitting on the salt flats. Some were sleeping. Some were tending to wounds. When they saw Robin and Seraphine, they didn't stand to attention. They just nodded. Acknowledgement. Respect. Sable was escorted away by her own elites, who had surrendered when the war signal vanished from their HUDs. She didn't fight. She looked like someone waking up from a long, bad dream. Robin stood on the porch, inhaling the cold, sharp air. Koa was sitting on the railing, swinging his legs, eating a nutrient bar Juniper had found. Seraphine stood beside Robin. She wasn't wearing her helmet. The wind caught her hair. "So," Seraphine said, looking out at the horizon, "we are stuck here. The ship is a shelter now. It cannot fly." "We can fix it," Robin said. "Eventually. Juniper is already making a list of parts. It might take 100 years, but we have time." "Time?" Seraphine mused. "A linear concept. I like it." She turned to him. She took his hand, entwining her fingers with his. "You realize," she said, a playful glint in her emerald eyes, "that technically you still carried the wolf child across the threshold. The Dawn debt is still valid." Robin laughed. It was a sound of pure relief. "I thought we settled that. I saved the world. Surely that covers the interest." "The principle remains," Seraphine said, leaning closer. Her shoulder brushed him. "The debt is a life for a life. You are bound to us, Robin. To the pack." Robin looked at her. He looked at Koa. He looked at the vast, beautiful, terrifying landscape of Rill. He realized he didn't want to be anywhere else. "A life for a life," Robin repeated. He looked Seraphine in the eye. "I have got a lot of years left, Dr. Seraphine. I can pay in installments, one day at a time, for the rest of my life. Is that acceptable?" Seraphine squeezed his hand tight. "It is acceptable," she whispered. "But do not think this means you get out of doing the dishes." "I wouldn't dream of it," Robin said. He looked up at the sky. The purple was gone, replaced by the blue of a new day. And for the first time in his life, Robin didn't feel like a man alone on a moon. He felt like a man who was exactly where he was supposed to be.